Hey everyone, Heero here, and today we're gonna look at Banyue, a DPS that uses EX special combos straight out of fighting games to deal big PP damage. I'll be discussing his kit, builds, wenchins, and possible teams. Just as a quick disclaimer though, the footage and information shown is from the creator experience server, so things could still change when his banner drops. Now let's first look at his regular basic attacks, of which he has two standard basic attack combo strings. The first is Towering Peaks, which is used by tapping the attack button, while the second is Majestic Summit, which is used by tapping the special button. Now for the sake of preventing confusion for the rest of the guide, I will be calling Towering Peaks normal basic attack and Majestic Summit special basic attack. But these basics are one of two main ways to combo into his 4 out of 6 EX specials. Depending on which basic attack combo is used and when the player presses either the basic or special button during the combo, Banyue will execute different EX specials. The second is with quick input commands, which allows him to use a specific EX special after certain abilities. But it requires pressing a combination of 3 basics or special inputs that correspond to a given EX special. These quick input commands essentially allows you to combo most of his abilities into EX specials. And they are important for maximizing his damage output and shortening his combo during stuns, but I'll talk more about that later. Just note, you can only use these quick inputs after an EX special, basic attack immolate, chain attack, ult, assist follow-up, dodge counter, or quick assist. Now let's look at his EX special Earth Shaker, which has 3 activation methods. The first is pressing special after using his normal basic attack 3 or 4, but you can also just hold special after a dodge counter, assist follow-up, or quick assist to activate it. As for its quick input command, you have to press basic, special, basic during any of the abilities I mentioned earlier. As for his second EX special, Lion's Roar, it can be activated by pressing special after his normal basic attack 1 or 2. And for its quick input command, you have to press basic, basic special after certain abilities. While his third EX special, Once Path, also has 3 activation methods. The first is pressing the attack button after using his special basic attack 3 or 4. But you can also just hold basic after a dodge counter, assist follow-up, or quick assist. And for its quick input command, you have to press special basic special after certain abilities. And finally, his fourth EX special, Mountain Tremor, it can be activated by pressing attack after special basic attack 1 or 2. While for its quick input command, you have to press special, special, basic. Now he also has 2 other enhanced EX specials that can only be used by using quick input commands after certain abilities. The first is Lion's Roar Wrath, which can only be activated by quickly inputting special, special, basic after EX special Once Path. Just make sure to take note of the combos on the bottom of the screen for the specific inputs required to use this ability. The second is Mountain Tremor Wrath, which can only be activated by inputting special, special, basic after EX special Earth Shaker. Again, make sure to take note of the specific inputs on screen. Now these 2 abilities are just upgraded versions of his EX specials, Mountain Tremor and Lion's Roar. And as much as possible, you want to combo into them and use them over the regular versions to maximize Banyue's damage since they do have higher multipliers. But moving on, he also has 3 types of dodges that can all easily combo into his EX specials if you use quick input commands or combo into his basic attacks. The first is his regular dodge counter, which follows up into the basic attack 3 of either his special or normal basic attacks depending on which button you press after dodging, which makes it easy to combo into an EX special since you won't need to use a quick input command. The second is his special dodge Battle Cry, which requires the player to rotate the joystick half a circle then press dodge to activate. After which quick inputs can be used to combo into EX specials, or you can hold the attack button to combo into a dodge counter. Just note, this is extremely difficult to execute on a keyboard and mouse, so it's not recommended for players without a controller. And finally, his third dodge, and the one you'll use the most, Immovable Mountain, which is activated by pressing dodge while Banyue is attacking to have him enter a defensive stance. And if an enemy hits him, he parries, deals daze, and follows up into his special assist follow-up by pressing attack. After which, you can combo into his EX specials by using quick input commands. Just note, you want to use this over his other dodges, since if you time it correctly, it can trigger a perfect block, giving 6 Wrathful Flames instead of the standard 4 from other dodges. Speaking of which, that brings us to his core passive, which first of all has a standard loadout of HP to sheer force conversion, 6 to adrenaline at the start of combat, and the sheer damage clause that all Rupture Agents have. Second, it also gives him a 300 sheer force, 36% fire damage, and 36% crit damage buff after using an EX special or assist follow-up. And this buff has a 30-second refreshable duration, so it's pretty much permanent. But now, let's look at Banyue's unique resource, Wrathful Fires, which has a max of 150 points. With you gaining 0.5 per every point of adrenaline consumed, 4 from defensive assist and perfect dodges, and 4 per Banyue parry, which gets boosted to 6 if you trigger a perfect block. Now if you reach 120 Wrathful Fires, Banyue can enter the Visage of Wrath state by using his charged basic attack Immolate, his chain attack, or ult. But just note, he can't gain Wrathful Fires in this state. And every time Banyue enters this state, he gains 4 Mountain Smite, which he can consume instead of Adrenaline to activate his EX specials. And by doing so, he also regens 10 Adrenaline. Just note, any leftover Mountain Smite will disappear if he exits his Wrath state. But aside from this, the state also gives him access to 2 unique charged basic attacks. The first is Toppling Mountain, which is a high damage charged basic attack which immediately ends his Wrath state. So make sure to only use it after consuming all Mountain Smite. And the second is Crushing Peaks, which can only be executed after using 2 EX specials, either by comboing from basic attacks or using quick input commands. And it directly follows up into Toppling Mountain to end the state. His Wrath state also gives him access to an auto combo by holding the special button, which consists of 4 EX specials with Toppling Mountain as a finisher to end the state. This is perfect for players who aren't too confident in stringing together combos using quick input commands and is fast enough to easily fit in a stun window. But there are a few things to note about this. First, it is important players use this when they have 4 Mountain Smite so they can execute the full combo. And lastly, it will result in less damage in a manually executed combo since it doesn't activate Crushing Peak. But moving on, if he uses charge attack outside of battle when above 50% and he has less than 120 Wrathful Fires, he charges up and consumes 50% of his HP to instantly give him the points needed to activate his Wrath state. As for his ult and chain attack, they're your fairly standard high damage attacks that don't really do anything special aside from activating his Visage of Wrath state if Banyue has 120 Wrathful Fires. And they are able to combo into his EX specials by using quick input commands. Now finally, for his additional ability, it needs a stun or support unit to activate, and it gives him a stack of the Video Raha buff after using an EX special attack by consuming Mountain Smite. This gives him a 5% fire damage buff per stack, stacking up to 3 times for a 15% buff. And it lasts for 8 seconds with a refreshable duration. Now finally, for ability prio, make sure to level his EX specials first, then his basics, then his ult, and finally his dodge and assists. You have to level up everything since he pretty much uses all of it, even his assist, since his parry combos into it. Now we can talk about some tech. More specifically, EX special cancelling, which is detailed in his kit. If you use quick input commands in the middle of any EX special, it can immediately activate a new EX special while cancelling the current one. And if you time this correctly, they can execute a perfect cancel, meaning they can still dish out the full damage of the previous EX special despite effectively animation cancelling it. Each ability has its own timing for perfect cancels, but it's much easier to achieve while in his Wrath state. But if you don't time it correctly, it will result in varying degrees of damage loss depending on how bad you time it. So I would highly advise against button mashing when playing Banyue, otherwise you'll end up like the rotation on screen, wasting most of your adrenaline dealing low damage. But with that in mind, to play Banyue effectively, he is heavily dependent on chaining his different abilities together into EX special combos. A good combo example is his standard Visage of Wrath combo. You want to start off with a basic attack, chain attack, or ult, then quick input through the EX specials on screen, with you ending with his charge attack to exit the state. If executed well enough with quick inputs, this combo just about fits the whole stun duration, but it's extremely hard to pull off through quick inputs alone. So, you always have the option of using his auto combo instead at the cost of a good chunk of damage if it's a bit too hard for you to memorize his quick inputs. You also just have an option of doing a 2 Earth Shaker and 2 Mountain Tremor Wrath combo. This is a much easier combo since you won't have to memorize as much quick inputs, and it also deals more damage since these two have the highest multipliers among his EX specials. As for combos outside of his Visage of Wrath, it generally depends on how much adrenaline he has. But a good rule to follow is to always try to combo from his basics or other abilities into the Wrath versions of his EX specials to maximize his damage while taking advantage of perfect cancels. But of course, these are only examples. Due to the nature of his kit, he has way more possible combos, so I'm sure there are far more optimal ones out there to better suit certain situations or teams. But just like me, not everyone may be skilled enough to perform said combos, so I highly suggest experimenting with him on your own to find a combo that works for you. But with this kit out of the way, let's talk about his Mindscapes. His M1 enables One's Path and Earthshaker to inflict tremor on an enemy, which reduces their fire res by 10%, making them take more damage from his EX specials and Wrathful State's charge attacks. It also allows his Crushing Peak's charge attack to extend stun durations by 2 seconds. This is simply just more Banyue damage, while allowing you to fit longer combos during stuns, which perfectly synergizes with his Rat state, giving him adrenaline for more EX specials. While his M2 increases the fire and crit damage buff from his core passive by 15%, while allowing him to restore 5 more adrenaline when consuming Mountain Smite to use an EX special. As for his M4, it increases the damage of his Wrath EX specials and Wrathful State's charge attacks by 30%, which again is just even more straightforward buffs to his damage. And finally for his M6, it allows his EX specials to now grant the Vidyaraha buff even outside of the Wrathful State. This buff also gains an additional 8% fire damage buff per stack, and its duration is extended to 30 seconds. It also enables his Battle Cry dodge to give a Vidyaraha stack every time you use it after an EX special, while also allowing his Crushing Peak's charge attack to deal an additional AoE equal to 600% of his sheer force. But with his Mindscapes out of the way, let's talk about possible Wenjin options. Banyue's signature gives 30% HP with its main stat and 20% crit rate just by equipping it. Aside from this, every time he triggers an EX special, his fire sheer damage increases by 9%. This can stack up to 2 times for an 18% buff, with each stack lasting up to 20 seconds with separate durations. Overall, it's a pretty simple Wenjin that not only makes him significantly easier to build, but also increases his damage quite a bit. But with that being said, he does have some decent alternatives. For 5 stars, you can use Yishuan's signature as a crit rate and HP stat stick to make him easier to build. In a similar vein, Yudhari's signature is also usable for the same reasons. However, it's much more hassle to use since Banyue needs to be equal to or below 50% HP to get its crit rate buff. While yes, using his Super Saiyan charge attack before combat puts him at 50% HP, allowing him to get it, it also means that you have to make sure you don't use healing ults like Lucius or Astra's if it would mean putting him above 50% HP. Otherwise, you would intentionally have to get hit to get its crit rate buff back, which isn't too ideal since it wastes time, potentially causing a damage loss. And it also means you lose out on the other useful effects from Astra's and Lucius ults. So again, it's a hassle, but you can make it work with him with enough conscious effort. As for 4-star Wenjin options, Puzzle Sphere is his only free-to-play choice, giving him a bit of crit damage while buffing his EX special damage, which is his main damage source, with its downsides being it giving attack instead of HP with its main stat, and it requires the enemy to be below 50% HP to get his EX special damage buff, so it's not too useful for Deadly Assault. Radio Wave Journey can work as an HP stat stick, however outside of ulting and double chain attacking during stuns, this Wenjin's buff doesn't have a good uptime, which is something to consider if you plan to run him in a double support team. And finally, Grillowisp can work too as an HP stat stick that also gives a fire damage buff just by equipping it. The issue is, in combat, he doesn't consume his HP, so you can't get its crit rate buff. But compared to his other 4-star options, this would be the best hassle-free general use Wenjin. But with his possible Wenjins out of the way, let's talk about drive discs. For the 4-piece set, his best set is Yinghui Tales. It's really the only set you should consider for him since it's the only set that provides him every single stat he needs. It gives him a huge sheer force and HP buff to increase his damage while also making him easier to build with his crit rate buff. And the neat thing is, due to him spamming EX specials, he can easily maintain full uptime of its buffs no problem. As for the 2-piece sets, he has 3 options: Woodpecker for crit rate, Branch and Blade Song for crit damage, or Inferno Metal for fire damage. Out of the 3, Woodpecker is the best due to its crit rate bonus, making him easier to build, while Inferno Metal can potentially be the worst depending on your team and Wenjin, since it's possible to get quite a bit of damage percent buffs with Banyue already, especially if you're using Lighter.
But with his possible drive discs out of the way, let's talk about stats.
Now before we get into his stats, it's very important to note that as a Rupture Agent, he already ignores all enemy defenses, so pen stats from a slot 5 main stat or substats are useless for him. But with that being said, you want crit for slot 4, HP or fire for slot 5, and HP for slot 6, which is your fairly standard Rupture class DPS build. Now for the slot 5 main stat, fire damage is good for general use. However, it's worth noting that Banyue can get quite a bit of damage percent buffs already from his kit, Wenjins, and teammates. So it's very easy to dilute the stat and get diminishing returns. This makes HP just as viable as a fire damage slot 5, so just pick whichever one has the best substats. As for substats, you mainly want to focus on crit stats first, then HP percent, then flat HP, then attack stats. Remember, attack is not useless for Rupture Agents since they convert 30% of their attack into sheer force, but HP is still more desired since they can get more sheer force from HP. Now for stat goals, as usual for Rupture Agents, I recommend around 16 to 20k HP depending on your slot 5 main stat and Wenjin, in order to get lots of sheer force and deal lots of damage. Now getting more isn't a bad idea, but only do so once you've balanced your crit stats. But speaking of which, for crit rate, I recommend around 80 to 100% in battle in order to ensure consistent crits. Now he does have a bit of crit rate sources like his core level up bonus, but if you're having trouble getting some, you can get as low as 75%. As for crit damage, I recommend aiming for 120 to 150% crit damage out of battle to ensure big damage. Just note, this does not include the crit damage buff from his core passive.
But with his stat breakdown out of the way, let's talk about possible teammates.
Well, for starters, just like every Rupture Agent, his current best partner is Lucia. Not only does she provide the biggest sheer force buff in the game, she also provides other buffs like max HP increases, damage buffs, and crit damage bonuses that skyrockets Banyue's damage. This is all on top of her not competing with Banyue for too much field time, giving him plenty of time to deal damage and dish out EX special combos to build his Wrathful Fires. However, if you don't have her, supports like Banyue and Hu for sheer force buffs, or Astra, Caesar, or even Yuzuha for their generalist support utility can work. Albeit just not as good as Lucia, but Banyue teams without her should still perform decently and clear just about any content. As for stunners, just like every attack or Rupture Agent, his best one is Dialin. She provides buffs for good damage, doesn't take up too much field time, increases stun durations, but most important of all, she enables Banyue to ult more in battle, which is insane for damage. But if you don't have her, Lighter of course is great for his fire-related buffs and low field time, making him one of Banyue's best stunners, especially if you can activate this additional ability. On-field stunners like Yufufu, Trigger, and then M6 Pokra, as usual, is great for allowing you to focus on on-fielding him, which is a very big quality of life upgrade that makes his teams a bit easier to play. But out of the 3, Yufufu is the best because she provides the most buffs, but Trigger is also great for her stun damage multiplier being available outside of stuns. Just note, don't use Trigger's signature since Banyue already ignores enemy defenses, and Pokra is recommended to be used when she's at M6 since her universal damage buff only becomes available then. And finally, Kuleda as usual is a decent budget option since she doesn't take up too much field time but can still stun enemies super fast with her EX specials. But sadly, aside from the Summit King set, she doesn't really provide any meaningful buffs to Banyue, so that puts her below other stunners. But now let's cook up some possible teams. Banyue is your pretty standard DPS when it comes to team building, so there isn't really too much to say. You can either run him in a double support team or your standard hyper carry comp with a stunner and support. The best variation of course being one with Lucia and either Dialin or Yufufu, which should be the best Banyue team in helping you tackle any type of content. But with that in mind, just about any variation of the Banyue team should be able to clear any type of content with varying degrees of success depending on your skill level. But just a note for lighter teams, he needs a Caledon or attack character like Orphe to activate his additional ability. Now you can run him without them just for his Fire Res Shred, but you lose out on his 75% fire damage buff, which isn't ideal since that's one of the things that puts him above other stunners.
But that's about it because I'm beginning to lose my voice. But there's just one last question.
Is he a must-pull? Well, usually I would say it would depend on your account or if you need a good fire DPS for Fire Week content. However, Banyue is an extremely special case. Due to how his kit is designed, he is the most unique character in terms of gameplay while simultaneously having the steepest learning curve. You need to make use and master both of his quick inputs and timing EX special animation cancelling in order to bring out his true potential. He is essentially a fighting game character without the crutch of having joystick inputs to make his combos easier. I would go as far as saying that he is one of, if not the hardest character in the game to play and master. But if you put in the time to learn how to play him, he is extremely rewarding and satisfying to play. So honestly, if you're not a big fan of trying to learn specific button inputs or don't really like combo and tech-reliant characters with steep learning curves, he isn't really for you and is definitely not a must-pull. But if you like complex combo-reliant characters, need a good fire DPS, and don't mind putting in the time to learn how to play him and memorize his quick input commands, or simply just like fighting game-like mechanics, he might be the character for you. But at the end of the day though, if you like Banyue, pull for him, and if you don't, well don't. Personally, I was gonna pull for him, but I changed my mind once I tested him due to me not being able to cope with my personal skill issue. But he is so damn cool though, so I might change my mind later on. Anyway, make sure to tell me what you think about him in the comments below, and don't forget to hit me with a like and a sub. Now, onto the showcases. Just note, I really suck at playing him.